Welcome, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Seattle, the fourth oldest and one of the world's largest Rotary clubs, where we embrace service above self and are connecting for good. Today, we are showcasing the amazing academic, research, cultural, intellectual, athletic force in our community, the University of Washington, AKA UW. And the Chief Husky is here today. I missed out. I don't happen to be a Husky, but I'm going to go with it. So to rally and inspire us today is our past president, Dorothy Bullitt. And after her remarks, please remain standing because Kim Moore is going to lead us in song, and Trish Bostrom is going to accompany her. Dorothy.
November is a sad month for some of us. Incessant rain, painful politics, dark days, horrible traffic. Old losses seem to weigh heavier this time of year. But I plug in my light box, take my vitamin D, and head off to the best job in the world. Walking across the University of Washington campus, I am buoyed by the sight of beautiful architecture, ever-changing trees, and thousands of young adults, diverse, intelligent, eager to learn, and ready to go out and make our world better. These students give me hope. They remind me that the days will grow long again, that spring will come, and that despite our November gloom, our future is bright. From the ashes, a fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring.
Well, I'm delighted to welcome the first of many UW Huskies that are going to be up here on stage today. And it's Bill Federley. Bill, will you come on up? In June, Bill concluded 3 years as a trustee on our Seattle Rotary Service Foundation and served as the president of the foundation in his third year. He's a recently retired architect from Callison, and he's here today to give us insight into where our dollars go and how we make an impact when we make our donations to the Seattle Rotary Service Foundation. So thank you, Bill, for your service and for your help with what you're going to share with us right now.
Just 2 weeks ago, Geraldine Brousseau reminded us of how the annual commitment to Seattle Rotary Service Foundation supports the Rotary Boys and Girls Club. I'm here today to show how that vital relationship plays with the Business Mentors Program at the University of Washington. As you know, in just a few weeks, we'll be kicking off the Service Foundation and Rotary International annual drives. These two opportunities provide us each with not only the potential to meet our obligations to Rotary, but to boost future projects through matching funds from the District 5030 and Rotary International. Truly the gifts that keep on giving. Through the Business Mentor Program, your annual pledge has helped develop a relationship between future business leaders and the world of Rotary, especially Seattle 4. Just think about it. For almost 29 years, the Mentors Program has carried forward a relationship with the University in Seattle 4, a relationship that is a little bit over a century old. The Business Mentors Program has fostered, and no pun intended, valued relationships between over 200 Seattle 4 Rotarians and 1,500 leaders, future leaders in the commerce study and at the Foster School of Business, a program which is, by the way, one of the top 10 programs in public universities in the country. Ask one of the Rotary mentors who's sitting next to you now how they've profited from their experience with the region's best and brightest of future business leaders. And then do the math. 15 companies of Seattle business communities per year. That's over 280 inner city and minority companies and operations that have been involved. And then talk about leverage. Your participation has helped lead to the generation of 100,000 jobs and $100 million in commerce. Way to go, Rotary. I'd like to introduce Gina Zhao, who is one of those best and brightest, and she's going to tell you about her experience with the Rotary Business Mentors Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Hello, everyone. My name is Gina Xiao, and I'm a senior studying economics at the University of Washington. I'd like to thank the Rotary for supporting the SBCDC and UW for so many years, especially through the multicultural marketing class that I took. As a student, I was able to take what I learned in the classroom and apply it in a business setting, which is really valuable for us, especially for a senior like me graduating very soon. I'd also like to thank Ashanta over there for providing mentorship throughout our class and our project. She really guided us through the business solutions and helped us get an A in that class. And lastly, I want to thank the Rotary for providing a scholarship for us. I was a recipient myself, and it's super rewarding to see all these students and all work put into and be impacted in the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you both. That was quick and efficient and informative. Well, we're going to get to our main program, which is why we came today, right? I'm delighted to welcome and introduce Michael Verschow. Michael is the founding director of the University of Washington's Consulting and Business Development Center. He's also a lecturer on marketing and international business at the Foster School. The Consulting and Business Development Center that Michael leads promotes growth among minority-owned, women-owned, and other diverse companies that are engaging a variety of undergraduates and MBA students who come in and provide some mentoring, coaching, and then actually also support the teaching of some classes, not only here in this Western Washington, but over in Yakima, the Tri-Cities, and for some of the Washington State tribes. Michael's pretty distinguished. He's got several awards to his credit. Michael, why don't you just come up here so people can see who I'm talking about here? Michael received the Boeing Company's Supplier Diversity Global Supplier Provider recognition. He also was awarded the National Minority Business Advocate of the Year Award by the U.S. Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency. Michael's been a member of our club since 2004, and today he's going to introduce our guest speaker. So thank you, Michael, for everything you do for our club and at the UW, and for helping us with today's program.
Thank you, President Kathy. So it's my honor to introduce Ana Mari Cauce, who is the 33rd president of the University of Washington. She was appointed to that position just a little over a year ago in October 2015. She's been a member of the University of Washington faculty since 1986 and became interim president in March of 2015, having previously served as provost and executive vice president. She was raised in Miami after immigrating to the U.S. from Cuba with her family. She earned a BA in English and psychology from the University of Miami and a PhD in psychology with a concentration in child, clinical, and community psychology from Yale University. During the course of her career at the UW, Dr. Cauce has been appointed to various leadership positions, including director of the UW Honors Program, chair of the American Ethnic Studies, chair of psychology, and the executive vice provost and dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. For her teaching, scholarship, and advocacy, Dr. Cauce has received numerous awards, including the Dalmas Taylor Distinguished Contribution Award and the James M. Jones Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Psychological Association, and the Distinguished Contribution Award from the Society for Community Research and Action. In 1999, she was awarded the Distinguished Teaching Award, which is the highest honor that the University of Washington gives to faculty members for their work with students in and outside the classroom. Locally, her leadership has been recognized by the Northwest Asian Weekly, Seattle Girls School, and the YWCA. President Cauce is a professor of psychology and American Ethnic Studies with secondary appointments in the Department of Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies at the College of Education. She maintains an active research program focusing on adolescent development with a special emphasis on at-risk youth. She's a strong advocate for women and underrepresented minorities to pursue careers in the STEM fields. Please join me in welcoming President Cauce.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that lovely introduction. I always feel that after introductions like that, I should just sit down and, call it a win. First of all, I'd love to know how many out there are that are alumni of the UW? Okay, keep your hands up. How many are parents of a student or an alumni of the UW? Okay. Now, how many of you have gotten care? Now, keep your hands up. How many of you have gotten care at one of the University of Washington Medical School's clinics or hospitals? Okay. Now, how many of you pay taxes in the state of Washington? All right. Well, we are your university. Very much. And I want to actually thank you for your support. If you fall into any of those categories, including just plain old regular taxpayers, you do support us. And it's our job to make sure that what we do serves you, and we take that very seriously. The University of Washington is deeply rooted in the state of Washington and in the Puget Sound area, including the business community, which so many of you are part of. In just the last month, we celebrated our partnership with Boeing, which has gone back for 100 years. It all started when William Boeing gave us a wind tunnel. We broke ground at the Global Innovation Exchange in the Spring District. That's our partnership with Tsinghua University. We call it, some of us like to call it geeks, because we are focusing on particularly degrees that are going to be tech-related. And that would not have been possible without a relatively large gift from Microsoft. We also announced an Amazon gift for our new computer science building, and we're hoping that that building will allow us, we're planning on that building allowing us to double the size of our computer science major, which is really a major that's very sought after by our students. Thank you. And that I know many of your organizations and companies would like to see more students from. Quite frankly, name a business in this area and they have some sort of relationship with us. And if you're in a business that doesn't have a relationship with us, please let me know because we can work something out. This year marks the 20th anniversary of our partnership between the Seattle Rotary Club and our Consulting and Business Development Center. The purpose of that partnership is to accelerate careers and grow businesses and jobs in diverse and underserved communities. During this time of the partnership, the 20 years, 200 members of your Rotary Club have mentored 1,500 undergraduate students from the Foster School of Business, and they've worked with nearly 300 small businesses located in lower income communities, mostly in Seattle or King County, or businesses that are women or minority owned. The impact that these students have had in this community have been tremendous, with 90% reporting that the mentorship program improved their job performance after graduation. So the program has really had a huge impact on the students, and the students have had a huge impact on businesses as well. The center has actually become a national model, and in early December, we're going to be announcing a national partnership with J.P. Morgan Chase to replicate the center's work by establishing similar centers in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Atlanta, and D.C. We like to say, be the first. Well, here's a wonderful example of how the UW is doing something right here with you that will now go national. Not bad. Now, the business community isn't just a part of us. We are very much a part of the business community. The University of Washington generates about an economic impact of about $12.5 billion a year, and we're responsible directly or indirectly for about 80,000 jobs in Washington. To give you a sense of our size, our operating yearly budget is upwards of $6 billion a year. We really are a very large university because we operate 3 hospitals. We have 3 campuses. And so that's part of why what we do is important, because we do it at scale and the impact is very, very large. Now, people think of us as being in the education and research business, and of course, that's what we are. But I think of us as basically being in the talent business. What we are all about is human capital. First of all, we attract human capital. Universities, especially research universities like the University of Washington or like Washington State, are magnets for talent. We attract the best faculty from all over the world and the best researchers, teachers, and healthcare providers. And by the way, when they come here, they all buy houses, or at least they rent. And in many cases, particularly when we attract top researchers, in many ways it's like attracting a small business. They bring in grant money. They hire not just other faculty and students, but administrative assistants, tech supporters, et cetera. So in that way, we are attracting talent into this entire area. But in turn, that talent that we bring in as researchers, as doctors, as teachers, end up in turn attracting the best students, graduates and undergraduates. It's very much a virtuous cycle. The more talent we have, the more talent we attract. James Fallow wrote this really lovely article in the Atlantic Monthly about a year ago, and he talked about successful cities and how they often develop around research universities. In many ways, he says, they've become the modern counterparts to a natural harbor or a river confluence. People settle near harbors and rivers because of their natural resources. If you had a settlement there, you had a lot that you could draw from. Where businesses develop around universities because they're hungry for talent, and universities supply those natural resources. It's hard to think about a vibrant city in this country, or quite frankly, around the world, that does not have a major research university in it. And in most cases, it's 2 research universities, so we have to have we have to double our impact. Universities not only attract talent, though, they develop it. Right now, we're especially focused on expanding capacity in STEM, especially computer science, as I mentioned. We've also just entered into a lovely partnership in Spokane with Gonzaga University to expand and enhance our medical education in Eastern Washington, sorry. Universities don't change on a dime, but that's not always a bad thing. A lot of times we talk about how universities are slow to change, but it's not necessarily bad that we don't change on a dime, because it means that we don't just chase trends. But we do change, and we are very cognizant of workforce needs. We don't consider ourselves being in the business of vocational training in the narrow sense of the word. But as we expand, when we think about where we're going to place our new budget dollars, we're very cognizant of workforce needs in the state. Again, people have a lot of preconceptions of universities based on when they went to university. And in fact, there are deep similarities. There is magic in the relationship between students and teachers, and I don't see that changing. Again, there are parts of universities that really are timeless. But we're really not your parents' university. And if you'd like to spend some time, we'd be glad to show you some of the things that we're doing. For example, if you were going to take intro biology, which is a very popular course, you take it with 799 of your closest friends. Now, that might seem a little daunting, but we're doing it an entirely different way. The classroom is flipped. The lectures are taped, and you listen to the lectures whether it's outdoors or in a cafe or together with a group of friends in your dorm room. The parts that you don't quite understand, you can watch again and again and again. Then you go into this class and you're divided up, and TAs are working with groups of students, groups of 5, 10, 15, and they're doing exercises in class. The results of those exercises then come up to the front of the class using clicker technology, and then the professor decides what areas are being learned well and what areas need to be focused on more. And in fact, this way of teaching, and the results have been published in Science, so I think that we can assume that the peer review was pretty good. not only finds that students learn more, all 800 of them learn more in this kind of classroom than in a smaller classroom, but the other part that's really exciting is it narrows the achievement gap between low-income and high-income students and between underrepresented minorities and others. So by using this new manner of teaching that in some ways is old as can be, it's about a teacher and a student, but in this new kind of environment, we've changed what used to be a weeder class into a feeder class. A lot of the ways in which we're teaching, we're really trying to create more of experiential kinds of experiences. So it's not just about reading or about hearing. I like to say that we've gone from a model of the sage on the stage to the guide on the side, which is really a much better way of learning. We're also investing a lot in what we call the Husky experience. And what that means is, for example, we have a lot of leadership experience. We have a really large leadership program. Not that long ago in our hub ballroom, we had 600 students who were listening to a couple of community members talk about their leadership experiences and particularly talk about their failures. We have a new resilience lab. Okay? The goal of the resilience lab is to normalize failure as the first step towards success. I worry a lot that as things have become competitive, we get a little risk averse. And we all know that if you have great ambitions, sometimes you're going to fall short. And often that's when you learn the most. And that becomes the platform for success in the future. So that's something that we're focusing on a lot. We have these maker spaces, which are just absolutely, I mean, I wish I could go back to college, just no question. You know, they've got these 3D printers and these, I don't know, these machines that sew for you. And what's cool about the maker spaces is they bring students from all over campus together. You've got the kids from the theater department that are making costumes. You've got the electrical engineers that are, making devices. And then you've got the business students that are kind of trolling to see if anything looks interesting. Last year, a couple of sophomores, together ended up developing some technology that turns sign language into, you can do signing, you wear kind of this mesh glove with sensors on it, and it turns it into words that can come out of your phone. I mean, these are sophomores, and they won one of the highest prizes, $20,000, at the MIT competition, and they met at one of the maker spaces. So we have all kinds of things happening, ideathons, fast pitch venture games, and a real focus on entrepreneurship, something that was less the case. I mean, at least when I was an undergraduate, business wasn't exactly something that was part of the culture outside of the business school. Now the focus on entrepreneurship runs across the university. So in many ways, those timeless aspects of the university are still there, but we really have changed, and we will continue to change. We think that learning that the learning inside the classroom needs to be complemented by experiences outside of it. Often this experiential learning develops those skills that most readily transfers to work settings. So for example, those skills of working together. Nowadays, very little happens alone. It's about working in teams. And these experiential experiences help us link talent inside the university with talent outside the university. More and more, we're also linking faculty ideas to those ready to put those ideas into places where they'll have impact. So for example, the University of Washington gets lots of rankings, and I could probably give you a list, but what I'm most proud of is that we're ranked number 5 in the world in terms of innovation. That is really cool. Last year, CoMotion, which is the program or structure that makes a lot of this happen, we spun out 21 companies. In fact, over the last 10 years, 186 companies have spun out of largely faculty research at the University of Washington. And one of the things that's really cool is that students are involved in most of this work. In fact, last year, of all the patents that university faculty got, 87% of them included a student as being part of the member of the team which developed that patent. The ability to help our faculty take their ideas to the marketplace has actually become critical to attracting top professors, particularly in computer science and engineering, and increasingly in other fields. One of my colleagues in clinical psychology has spun out her company in terms of the work that they do doing, how shall I say, intake, and the kinds of tools they use for that. And the work that they've done is now being used in clinics on campuses at 30 universities and more in actual clinic settings outside of the university. So this work is really important. So what's my vision for the university? Actually, it's pretty simple. I want the University of Washington to be the top university in the world in terms of impact. Okay. And we can do it. Now, when I talk about impact, I mean it in the broad sense. And we talk a lot about inclusive innovation. When we think about innovation and when we think about disruption, we also want to be thinking about who's being disrupted. And we think it's very important, as we're doing innovative work, to work with the communities that we're working with. Because, you know, PhDs have some really good ideas, but there's lots of good ideas out there that don't belong to PhDs. And so it really is important to bring the community in as we're doing our innovative work. And when we talk about innovation, it's not just about forming businesses, although that is important. We also want to innovate in social spaces, tackling problems like livable cities, drug abuse, and homelessness, where we know we need innovative interventions because what we're doing right now isn't working very well. These kinds of issues, these areas, these social issues are ones that are important to all of us, and they require the participation of the whole community, including the business community. Now, the fact that we want to have impact, that we want to make sure that those really bright ideas of our faculty and students and staff get out there into the world, doesn't mean that we're abandoning something that universities are almost unique at, and that's playing the long ball game. We don't have to worry about quarterly reports or bottom lines in the same way that you often have to. So we can really invest in discovery or curiosity-based research, what we often talk about as basic research. This may sound a little woo-woo, but the truth is that I believe with all my heart, and quite frankly, research tends to bear out, that the human imagination takes us to important places, even if we don't know exactly where that is at the time. A wonderful example that I like to give, because for me it's the closest thing to magic, is lasers. Okay? If any of you have had surgery using lasers, it is like magic. You can walk out of the hospital often the same day, and you don't have all these stitches in quite the same way. Yet, lasers, which are used in medicine, weren't invented by some, really smart physician who said, knives are pretty dull instruments. We got to have something better. Lasers came from physicists who were literally trying to touch the face of God and understand how the universe began. So it really is important that we have places that are doing this kind of discovery or curiosity or basic research. Basic research is the seed corn for applications in years to come. Most recently, we can talk about the work of Professor David Tholus. He was doing work on condensed matter, or the topography of elements. Now, quite frankly, I understand condensed matter about as well as I understand condensed milk, but that work had important implications for the creation of advanced materials and supercomputing, and I know it's important because it led to our 7th Nobel Prize. Two of our Nobel Prizes are in physics, and I'm going to be going to Stockholm in about a month, and it's required that you wear a ball gown. And for those of you that know me, there's not much that can get me into a ball gown, but the Nobel Prize will do it. So we have no desire to move people away from basic research, but where we want to focus on is how do we make the leap from basic research to applied research more purposeful. So for example, the laser that I talked about ended up making that jump. It took about 50 years for that to happen, and it was really by chance. And a lot of that move from great ideas into ideas that have impact happened by chance. Two people talking together at a dinner party, and you start finding, or often it's a graduate student that works in 2 different labs and then finds the link. Translation often happens by chance, or what we like to call serendipity. What we're trying to do at the university is we're trying to create the kinds of settings that give serendipity a push. How can we create the kinds of environments, the kinds of crossroads, the kinds of initiatives that bring people from around the university together in ways that are purposeful? Some people think that, hey, you know, you're doing so many things. Isn't that too much? Well, actually, I think our comprehensiveness, the fact that we're one of the few universities in the world that has the full array of health sciences, not just medicine, but public health, dentistry, nursing, pharmacy, all of these in the top 10, by the way, those can be real strengths. And the fact that we can put them together with places like the Jackson School or the Business School or engineering, we really see that as a competitive advantage because it's often in that spaces between disciplines that really new, exciting discoveries can take place. So what we're working on is, again, how do we create those settings that give serendipity a push? Well, one way that we can do this is through initiatives. And some of you may have heard of one of our most recent initiatives, one of our most important, on population health. What population health is all about, it's bringing big data techniques together with health knowledge in a way that can be truly transformative on a global scale. And the Institute of Health Metrics has been right square in the middle of that work. Their techniques of really putting big data together gives us the ability to not just diagnose individuals, but to actually diagnose communities. And that is so important in terms of really moving health forward. For example, one of the most touching experiences that I've had recently is that the Institute of Health Metrics gives something called the Rue Prize every year. And it's a prize that's given to some entity that has used the data, their community diagnostic data, in a way that's had impact. And the most recent prize went to the health minister of Rwanda. And what she had done was using the data coming out of the Institute of Health Metrics, and what's really cool is that it's not just mortality data. Because look, at the end of the day, so far, we all know that at some point we're going to die. Okay, and it's very different. If you're looking at where to intervene, it's very different if you've got a disease that primarily targets people in their 90s than if you've got one that primarily targets people in their 40s. So when they look at the global burden of disease, they look at years lost, not just what kills you, so to speak. So using that data, the Prime Minister of Rwanda, the Health Minister of Rwanda, she found that one of the biggest killers was actually indoor pollution. And so using that data, rather than buying a whole bunch of expensive medical equipment, they bought a whole bunch of new cook stoves that didn't emit pollution. And that will probably have a greater impact than almost anything else she could have done. And it was the data from the Institute of Health Metrics that helped her target that as an area of intervention. Population health looks at health of communities, and not just of health in terms of the absence of disease, but also are individuals in that community, do they feel empowered? Because if you don't have empowered people, you don't really have democratic societies that we think are so important. Also, some of the really cool things that are happening as part of this initiative is that a whole new area that we like to think of as mobile health or telemedicine. So, for example, we have a absolutely fabulous faculty member in computer science and electrical engineering. He's a MacArthur Award winner. He looks like he's about 12, but he is older than that. And he's been developing these medical devices for diagnosis that are just amazing. I left my cell phone in my purse so it wouldn't go out, but I have this funky little autoimmune disease. It's not a big deal. It's called sarcoidosis. But what it means is that, and by the way, it could have been a big deal, because for most people, it takes about 1.5 years to get diagnosed, because autoimmune diseases are very hard. I was diagnosed in 3 days. That's what a research hospital will do for you. So the effect on my lungs, my lungs weren't being eaten away for 1.5 years before it was diagnosed. But I've got a deal. I don't like to take prednisone. It makes me hangry. And there's nothing worse than a hangry president, believe me. So I've got this deal with my doc that every 6 months I come in and get my lung functions tested to see if there's, an issue. Now I can do that on my phone. Okay? Now, for me, it's pretty cool, because I don't just have 3 or 4 hours to spare twice a year. But think about someone that has to drive 40 miles to be able to get their lung functions tested. Think about the difference in cost to the individual or to an insurance company. But the other part that's so exciting about this mobile health is that the truth is, if you go to the doctor once a year, every 6 months, you're either going too early or too late. Either nothing's wrong and they say, go home, and you feel like you wasted a couple hours, although it's better than the alternative, agreed. Or they find something wrong, and it's been wrong for the last 4 months, and if they had just gotten it 4 months ago, things would be a lot better. And these kind of devices allow you, if you want to, check your lung functions every week you can, or every month you can. Some of the other things, you can take a picture of yourself, and it'll tell you whether you have anemia. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we can do when we get the whole university working together to focus on population health. It's about the health sciences, it's about the social sciences, because we know that political systems, we know that this week more than ever, have an effect on your mental health, if not your physical health as well. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is, again, how do we find those ways that we can bring the university as a whole together to do big, important things that are important, that make a difference? This is just one example. I've mostly been talking about technology, but I want you to know that the arts are very important and the humanities are very important to what we do. They also attract talent. People decide where they want to live based on theaters, museums, symphonies, so we're not leaving the arts out of it. So I want to make sure to leave time for questions. So in closing, I just want to thank you for your leadership and partnership, and stay in touch, because we will have new things to talk about a year from now. Oh, no questions? We're out of time. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I think we've just heard from the push behind that serendipity. So thank you, President Cauce, so much for your remarks. And we're right down to the wire here, so I want to leave you with my call to action this week. I'm going to invite you to think about what we heard from Nick Anderson, those announcements about all of the activities that are going on in our club. The after party that Ben just told us about. And in fact, I have some late breaking news. Maybe you recall we talked about a tour that's going to be hosted at Joint Base Lewis McChord on the 7th of November. And I understand there are still some spaces available. And actually, we've got someone from Joint Base Lewis McChord. Sophie, will you stand up? If you think you'd like to join, this is a very informative day. You really get a great tour of the base and then an opportunity to meet at General Lanza's home for a little bit of fellowship. Please see Sophie to get that lined up. But that's a wonderful fellowship opportunity. So again, my call to action is let's find something, be it a service project, one of our fellowship events, or one of our educational opportunities, and be active Rotarians in the month of November. We are adjourned until next week.